What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. I'm Noah Schreckbein, joined every Monday and Wednesday by my main man, Steven Thompson. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today, we got plenty to talk about. Mike Tomlin contract extensions have lit up the Pittsburgh Steelers headline. 3 current Steelers left off a very important list with the 33rd team. Naji and Claypool got some pretty big expectations for 2023, and we'll possibly get into some quarterback conversation as well. 4th of July weekend started off a little disappointment. We'll get into that in a second, but it's a beautiful day in the Berg. I believe the air quality is back to do not go outside, so we're all stuck in once again. How you feeling, my friend?
Feeling good. Yeah, I did most of my 4th of July celebrating over the weekend.
Nice.
So Monday and Tuesday were pretty relaxed, but did a little grilling at a friend's house. It was very nice, much needed. But yeah, no, it was a good weekend. I can still see some of the smoke. I think I stepped outside today and can still see some of the smoke from the fireworks hanging over the city. But yeah, it's a beautiful day. Feeling good. How about you?
I'm feeling good. I do feel it on the fireworks. I'm not you firework guy. You big firework guy?
Yeah, I like fire. So I didn't make a big deal about going to see him last night, but I do enjoy a good fireworks show. Yeah.
I gotta say, I'm not a firework guy. I don't mind them. I'm not like turn these fireworks off. This is so annoying. But I'm not like a go see fireworks type of guy. People across the street from me, I hope and pray they do not listen to this podcast. People across the street from me, like I'm in my neighbor. I'm in a suburban neighborhood. I could literally high five my neighbor while sitting on my front porch. People across the street from me were lighting fireworks off in their backyard. And I was just sitting there. I was just like, this is awesome, first of all. But second off, somebody's house is going to get burnt down. You're all hammered. I know you're hammered because you said hi to me when I got out of the truck. But besides, if it's that close, I'm a big fan of fireworks. Let me put on a show. Am I going to go to like the downtown fireworks?
Oh yeah.
Nah.
I loved when I lived in Oakland because there were my house was just like a bunch of townhouses all in a row, so you could climb up to someone's roof and like walk up and down, and you could see fireworks in a million different directions. Like I could see the ones on the south side, I could see the ones at the Point, North Shore. Like there were, and there's like they're like the official ones, the town like down at Point Park, but you see a ton more in like south side, the unsanctioned ones, which is pretty sweet.
The unsanctioned fireworks are always the best fireworks. I feel, you know what I mean? Not so there's no expectations. You're just like, oh yeah, light those babies off. Let's see what happens. I'm a big fan. 4th of July was a little bit ruined for me. Won't lie. I was telling you yesterday, telling everybody. I mean, my fiance knew the second that we woke up. There was one thing I was looking forward to all day. I look forward to it all year long. Sporting events, obviously my life. No sporting event, I think, tops what I look forward to on the 4th of July. That is the hot dog eating contest. Was postponed like 2.5 hours. I thought it was canceled. So I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I was very upset. Left, couldn't believe that there was no indoor backup plan. You're in an amusement park. You can't find any tent where you guys could just go hang out for 10 minutes. It's 10 minutes. Delayed it for 2 hours. By the time I got to my 4th of July party, I looked at the phone as we're talking about the hot dog, how we were, everybody there was like, I can't believe it got canceled, blah, blah, blah. Look at the phone. Joey Chestnut's a champion. And I'm like, what are we doing? Nobody told me it was back on. It was, you got like 3 minutes worth of warning that they were going to eat a bunch of hot dogs. I don't want to say it ruined my 4th of July. Shout out to America, but it did not help. It certainly did not help.
Well, yeah, I turned it on and I was waiting for, I was like, how long can a lightning delay last? Like, how can a weather delay last at a hot dog eating contest? And yeah, you're right. You got no warning. Like usually when you, when you're like watching a baseball game or something, like you get a little alert on your phone, like, oh, Pirates, Dodgers, whatever went into a weather delay. Pirates, Dodgers is resumed play again. But like you didn't get any kind of heads up about it. And no one wanted to. It did end up being kind of a lackluster event, I would say. This was not Joey's best performance, but
but still a winner, still a winner. 62 dogs is, more impressive than anything I would ever do. 77 dogs next year, which was what I was worried this was going to be like the end of Joey Chestnut, like, win one, head off, and I missed. I don't think he's leaving at 62 dogs. I think he's going to try,
can't go out on that.
Yeah. You're trying to break the record, leave as a champion, the greatest of all time. You think this was the hottest topic of that. I mean, right before the SB nomination thing that we all watched for 2 hours, all they talked about on First Take outside of hip hop music, which this is ESPN, was whether or not Joey Chestnut is like one of the greatest athletes of all time. I'm going to just throw it out there. I don't need to give much explanation. Joey Chestnut, in my opinion, is one of the greatest athletes of all time. He is a GOAT in my head.
Yeah.
I feel like you disagree.
I would have to do more thinking about what constitutes an athlete necessarily, but like competitor, like
competitor. I like
individual competitor. It's hard to argue. Like no one even comes close to like touching this guy ever.
No. Last year he choked out a protester, still won, and almost broke his record. Like, Imagine if that guy didn't run on stage trying to protect whatever a hot dog is made out of, and Joey Chestnut didn't have to get involved. Would have smoked the record. Would have smoked it. So, yeah, I like the word competitor. I agree with that one. All right, let's talk some Pittsburgh Steelers football because that also happened over the week. Plenty to talk about. We'll start with a list from the 33rd team that has people going bonkers. They named a bunch of guys from current NFL teams that they believe are quote unquote headed for the Hall of Fame. They broke it into 3 categories: Hall of Fame locks. Then they went to likely Hall of Famers and then potential Hall of Famers. Plenty of big names, plenty of names to talk about. 3 names did not make the list that has Steelers fans up in arms, should have Steelers fans up in arms. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, Patrick Peterson, all not on this 33rd list. Meanwhile, you got names like Ndamukong Suh, Myles Garrett, Cordell Patterson, Jalen Ramsey, Matt Ryan, so on and so forth, all making the list. All question marks, I believe, in a lot of people's heads. Maybe these guys, maybe TJ Watt, maybe Cam Hayward, maybe Patrick Peterson are question marks as well. I don't know. I guess we'll get into it. What do you, when you saw the list, didn't see those names, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, so I don't think any of those guys like would fall into the lock category. I think that's pretty fair to say. But the idea that like Ndamukong Suh and Jalen Ramsey and Matt Ryan, like that those guys have, the fact that those 3 weren't even mentioned is pretty crazy. There's some like there's an easy way to explain it away. Like TJ's real young, like he's had a great career so far, but he's still a young guy. I mean Patrick Peterson, that one makes even less sense. I mean, you just like you look at how many Pro Bowls and all pro teams he's made. Like he's up there with like, I think Julio Jones is on this list somewhere. Like,
yeah, he's a lock. He's considered a lock.
Right. It's like the same career. It's like, in terms of like individual accomplishments. Cam's an interesting one, I think, because he's done most of his stuff, like his career, like most of his individual accolades were kind of built on the back end of his career. Like it's all since he didn't make a Pro Bowl until 2017. He didn't make an All Pro. I think that was when his first All Pro team was too.
Yeah.
So like Cam honestly like feels like the least likely one to me, which is weird to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Cam's always been a question mark just because, just like you said, like he's in the heart of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He has always been a key piece, a dominant defensive lineman. But in the overall grand scheme of things, he's always kind of floated under the radar. He's always been like, yeah, he's really good. He's in consideration for an All-Pro, but you're not going to talk about him in the same conversation as Aaron Donald. I think at this point, like Aaron Donald's a tier of his own. But if you're talking about great defensive linemen and you remove the age and you're just talking about who we're going to build a team with, everybody's on the same playing field. Cam Hayward's like one of the first 5 defensive tackles that you're going to take in the NFL. But I agree with you. Like, I think he is the only question mark of the 3 that is a Hall of Famer. TJ Watt, unless I think the thing with TJ Watt is people like somewhat expect him to just like go off the rails with injuries. And I think 1 year of injury is, I get what JJ Watt, what happened to him, but like, come on, like until this is a trend, it's not a trend. It's just, a 1 injury that he came back from in 7 weeks. Like he came back from pec injury in 7 weeks and then made the Pro Bowl. Like, I just think, I think that stands pretty high on whatever ground you're looking for. I will say this. I dug into it a little bit when you're looking at numbers and stuff. This is just what these 3 guys are looking with just right now as they stand. So, we'll start with this. The best availability is availability. And who's on the end of this list is Ndamukong Suh, who hasn't played anything but the last 2 games of a regular season and then a playoff run the last 10 years, I feel like, in the NFL. Cam Hayward has missed one half of a season in his entire career. Entire thing. Patrick Peterson has never missed significant time. He's 12 years into his career, never once missed significant time. Then I think the biggest thing with Patrick Peterson, because you could dive into all the numbers and, the fact that he's only allowed 20 touchdowns in his 12-year career, but he made the all-decade team in 2010, which, like, if you're one of the greatest players of your decade,
right,
you're not making the Hall of Fame. Like, what is the standard there? What it's just like, well, you're not the best player of your final year, so looks like you're not in the Hall of Fame. With TJ, I get it. He's still got some time, still career to build on. But at this point, he's led the league in sacks twice. He's led the league in forced fumbles once. He's a 5-time Pro Bowler, 4-time All Pro. At one year he made the All Pro. He made the first team All Pro as an outside linebacker, and then second team All Pro as an edge rusher in the same year. Like, right. I didn't even think that was allowed to happen. That's how good TJ Watt was. And then he owns a share of the single season sack record, and he's a former defensive player of the year. Like, I just, the resumes are just ridiculous to just leave them. And I'm not trying to say anybody should leave the list, but to take them off the list, like, disrespectful.
Right. And like, I don't know. Yeah. It's just those omitting these guys when you're going to include Myles Garrett, Fletcher Cox, Khalil Mack, Cordell Patterson, like even like Devontae Adams, like Jalen Ramsey too. Like, come on. This is, how do those guys get mentioned ahead of them? I think that's the thing that's most, it's not that, I don't know. It's not that any of those guys, I guess, are undeserving or won't, like, don't have kind of Hall of Fame potential, but they haven't done as much as TJ or Cam or Patrick Peterson. So it's just, it was just weird to include them while excluding those three guys.
Yeah, I think and maybe you agree with this one, but I think the not having a Super Bowl is pretty significant on this list of holding them back, because especially with names like Ndamukong Suh. Like, I get Ndamukong Suh was dominant for a long time, but I don't know. Like, once he started joining the Super Bowl team after Super Bowl team after Super Bowl team, I felt like people looked at him differently as just like, oh, this is a key piece to going to win a Super Bowl. Was it? No, not really. And then, Jalen Ramsey's got the Super Bowl. Matt Stafford's got the Super Bowl. Matt Ryan and Cordell Patterson being on this list is ridiculous, in my opinion. Like, the Cordell Patterson, you said it before we jumped on here, you got to give special teams guys their flowers. I get that. I 100% agree. Devin Hester is not in the Hall of Fame. Until he is in the Hall of Fame, I'm not putting another kick returner in the Hall of Fame. Like, I just, it just doesn't, how are you going to exclude the greatest of all time and then just be like, oh, well, these other guys also very good. Yeah. And just, I don't know. The Myles Garrett thing is,
that might be the worst one on. That might be even worse than Ndamukong Suh.
It is.
Like, Myles Garrett got anointed. Like you said it before we got on too. Myles Garrett got anointed, greatest defensive player of all time before he even stepped on an NFL football field, and he has not done anything, I think, to like live up to that expectation.
No. If you were an actual Hall of Fame voter right now, and Myles Garrett walked away from the NFL. And because if you're going to make the argument that TJ Watt's early in his career and Myles Garrett isn't, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. So if Myles Garrett walked away from his career right now, headed to the Hall of Fame, you're a Hall of Fame voter. Are you even considering him? Like, is he even making it past the first round of contenders?
No, I don't know. I don't see any reason why he would get like a single vote for. No, Myles Garrett is not. Yeah, I don't know what you're like. What you're like, their argument for it, like they did a little, 2 cents blurb about it. At times, Myles Garrett is a dominant pass rusher. If only his team could be a consistent contender. What? How is that even like? That's not even like, oh, if Myles Garrett continues on his current pace, he's going to have all these accolades and he's going to be, in this stratosphere of the great pass rushers in the NFL. Like, that's just, oh, he was pretty good for a little bit, like
for just a tiny bit of time,
right? Like, what are we doing? That was the worst one, I think, on this list to me.
Oh yeah. And he, he doesn't even match up with, he's a 4-time All Pro. So is TJ Watt. He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. TJ Watt's a 5-time Pro Bowler. That's it. He's never led the league in sacks. He's never led the league in tackles. He's never led the league in anything. He's just Myles Garrett. He's a scary human being. Just like you said, like when he was drafted first overall, he was already he was like, this guy's going to be better than Aaron Donald. And it's 100% guaranteed. And since then, everybody's just like, well, have you seen him? Do you see how big and ginormous and scary look? Have you seen his offseason workouts? Nobody at all talks about. And if we're going to talk about a team that's slipping under the radar, like I think the Cam Hayward argument has a lot to do with, if you're going to go for Cam Hayward, what's going to hurt you in that argument is the fact that like during the season, he's not talked about a lot because the Steelers defense kind of just flies under the radar a lot of the season unless they're like ridiculously good. Myles Garrett is almost this, like you're in season and you're like, oh man, forgot about Myles Garrett. Like forgot that he's the thing because nobody's talking about Cleveland. So just, it's just when you're making lists, you're just like, oh yeah, Myles Garrett. He's always like the first name you're going to write down. And then you'll just like, oh, I'll fill him in somewhere. Like, we'll
everyone knows who it is for,
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that they're not on here is, I mean, the word I come up with is disrespectful. I think that it is disrespectful for them not to be on this list. At least the two of them. Like, at least if you're going to go possible Hall of Famers, TJ Watt's got to be on there. Patrick Peterson, I think, is like, you could put him anywhere in any of the three sections, and I feel he fits fine. But he's like, if Patrick Peterson doesn't get into the Hall of Fame, what are we even doing? Like, what do we, how are you going to hold that guy back? He's never done anything but perform. Even last year, 32 years old, 4 interceptions. Like, what are we doing here?
Right. And like the longevity argument gets used like pretty well. Like it gets thrown around. It gets like used in weird spots and not used in other weird spots. Like I think especially for a corner, like that does not feel like a position where guys last super long.
No.
It's not quarterback. It's not up. I guess offensive line's not a good one, but it's not even like defensive line where like you still got 33, 34-year-old, 35-year-olds that are still making plays like that. Like he's a little bit of a unicorn in that sense.
Yeah, 100%. And to play full seasons. Like that's the thing, is he played a full season at 32 years old, started every single game, came up with 4 interceptions. That's just unheard of in the NFL. And, again, just makes absolutely zero sense, but we didn't come up with the list. 33rd team did. If you want to go complain about them, I don't know if their comment section's open, but go hit them up on Twitter. Go let them know what's up. All right, next thing I want to talk about, Mike Tomlin's contract extension has become a pretty big topic of conversation around the city of Pittsburgh. It's more of a, does he deserve a contract extension? His contract doesn't actually end for another year, but the Steelers, this is about the time that the Steelers typically choose to extend him for another contract. The last time it was weird. They waited until right up until the last year of his contract. Typically they give him 2 years just to, have that wiggle room and see what's going on. 93.7 The Fan has asked this in like a number of ways, and no shots at 93.7 The Fan, excuse me, but they've asked it in more of a, does he deserve a contract extension? Should the Steelers consider moving on from Mike Tomlin, blah 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 type of situation? Do you think that Steelers, I'm going to ask it the way they ask it. Do you think that the Steelers should consider extending Mike Tomlin, or do you think it's time to maybe consider alternative routes?
Yeah, I think they should consider extending him. I don't know. Like, I think this conversation happens in every sport at every level. When you've got a coach who's good, but not, kind of top tier, top tier in their sport or in their league. If you don't, for anyone who does not want to extend Mike Tomlin, for anyone who doesn't want him in Pittsburgh past the end of his current contract, you should have to name at least 3 coaches you think that are both obtainable and better than Mike Tomlin. And I don't think you can. I don't think you can name 3 coaches that the Steelers could get that are definitively better than Mike Tomlin. So yeah, extend him. Like honestly, until you find some better alternatives, Mike Tomlin should be your guy for as long as he wants to. This guy's done nothing but win. I get it. Like I understand the argument about like the lack of playoff wins, especially in recent history, but I don't know. They're plain and simply, there aren't that many coaches who have won Super Bowls like currently in the league. Like that list is real short. So just judging off that pedigree and that history and where this team is headed, like he's going to have as good a roster as he's had in what, like, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years.
A long time. Yeah.
Like I get it. Like the lack of playoff success is really frustrating, but his teams have like not been super talented recently.
No.
So like I think you give him a team that can win a Super Bowl and he will be a Super Bowl contender. I think it's that simple.
That's what he did last time. You know, you look at, to touch on your point about Super Bowl winning coaches, because that's what everybody brings up, obviously. Oh, he hasn't won a Super Bowl. You know, how are you going to, he won a Super Bowl with Bill Cowher's team. I get the playoff thing. Like at this point, we've hit a point where, yeah, teams have been not so successful, but at the same time, like the 2020 season should have won a playoff game. That, you know, you should have beat the Browns in the first round of the playoffs. That excuse, but at the same, like, was that him or was that Marquise Pouncey and his bad snaps, or Ben throwing 4 or 5 interceptions in that game? Like, who's really at blame? Is that Mike Tomlin or is that an?
He shouldn't have called the interception play. That was
shouldn't have given Ben Roethlisberger the football. Shouldn't even give him the opportunity in a playoff game. That's what shouldn't have happened, fellas. Have you ever wished you were a little bit taller? Maybe you matched on Tinder, but her profile says must be over 6 foot. Maybe your date wants to wear heels, but she can't because it'll make her taller than you. Well, I got the short kings covered with today's sponsor, Kunzuri. Kunzuri makes shoes that are up to 2.8 inches taller without anyone knowing. Look, girls get heels, makeup, and push-up bras. Why can't men get a boost in confidence too? We're all the same height lying down anyways. You know what I mean? For a limited time only, our listeners get an extra 15% off with our code ALLSteelers at Kunzuri.com. The site is already 30% off, and with our code, you get an extra 15%. That's 45% off your entire order. Support our show and check them out at CONZURI.com and use our code ALLSteelers. Not only do Kunzuri shoes make you up to 2.8 inches taller, but they're also incredibly stylish and comfortable. These are not old man Velcro shoes. You'd get compliments on your Kunzuris even if they didn't make you taller. They have styles for every occasion too. Smart, casual, sporty, you name it. The height insoles are actually built into the shoe, so no one could tell you're getting a secret height boost. The brand is also hidden on the shoes and on the packaging. It's really the ultimate height hack. Life's short, but you don't have to be. It's time to level up your playing field, boys. Maybe update that dating profile to 6 feet. Kunzuri is an absolute game changer when it comes to your dating life. On top of 30% off the site, our listeners get an exclusive 15% off discount at Kunzuri.com with our code ALLSteelers. That's a total of 45% off your order. Use our code ALLSteelers at Kunzuri.com. Go to CONZURI.com with our code ALLSteelers. When I get high, I put on a pair of Kunzuris. There are only a handful of head coaches who have won a Super Bowl, and none of them have won one anytime recently outside of Sean McVay and I guess Doug Peterson, but even he's been a minute here. Obviously, Andy Reid, who is, top of the tier right now. Then there's Bill Belichick, obviously, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Pete Carroll, Mike McCarthy, Sean Payton, Doug Peterson, and Sean McVay are the only other coaches that have won a Super Bowl currently on an NFL roster. It's been, Sean Payton won a Super Bowl a decade ago. Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl over a decade ago against the Pittsburgh Steelers. Doug Peterson, it's been a minute. John Harbaugh, it's been just about the same time as the rest of them. Pete Carroll, it's been just about the same time as the rest of them. Like, unless you're Andy Reid or Sean McVay, I guess, you're not wins. Like, you just haven't won a Super Bowl. If you're in the NFL, you just haven't won a Super Bowl.
Right. And Sean McVay did it through, like, literally just brute force. Like, the Rams they mortgaged their entire future for that one Super Bowl. And the Steelers aren't, I don't know. You give Mike Tomlin that roster that won that Super Bowl with the Rams, I could guarantee, I bet he could win a Super Bowl with that one.
I bet he'd win. Yeah, it wouldn't even be close. It wouldn't be. And Sean McVay is a phenomenal head coach.
Oh yeah.
Just like you said, like the Rams aren't going. The Rams could be the worst team in football this season, and it wouldn't surprise anybody. And then they could be the worst team in football for the next 3 seasons, and it wouldn't surprise any. They put all
And
their
it's
eggs
by
in one
design.
basket. Yeah,
That was by design. It was
exactly. They put it all. They said, "Hey, we're going to win a Super Bowl. We don't care what happens after the Super Bowl." The Steelers do not think like that. They never will think like that. If you told Art Rooney, "Hey, we're just going to go all in this season. We're going to win it, and then it's going to be a struggle. We're going to have to rebuild. It's going to take 10 plus years, but we'll figure it out from there." He would look at you and say, "Well, that's not even. Don't even consider that. I don't even take that off the table immediately because we're not going to be competitive every single season. We're going to win a Super Bowl the right way." And that works out. But just like you said, Mike Tomlin hasn't had a team as good as the one this year appears on paper in quite some time. It's been a minute. He hasn't had an offensive line in 5+ years. He hasn't had a consistent defense in a long time. He's dealt with some really rough coordinators, which I think are partially his fault. But I think at the same time, like the Matt Canada thing, I want to say Art Rooney had a hand in that and making sure that he sticks around because of how cautious they are. Kenny Pickett, he's never had a top 10 pick outside of trading up for Devin Bush. It's not like he's working with these phenomenal players. He's got to build everything around him. I mean, look, it's this simple. Mike Tomlin is in Pittsburgh until he doesn't want to be in Pittsburgh anymore. And he's 51 years old, which means that if he wants to be in Pittsburgh for the next 20 years, he's in Pittsburgh for the next 20 years, and you don't got to worry about a thing because they will be competitive. They should win some playoff games. He's got to start winning some playoff games, but you never walk into a season going, "No, Mike Tomlin's going to disappoint this year." That's just, and if you do, you're very pessimistic, and you should probably, just ease up a little bit because the guy is, he's made a lot out of nothing.
Right. And he's done, in my opinion, the vast majority of the time, he's gotten the most out of every roster he's had,
Yes.
Like you said, there are some situations where he, lets you down, where the roster plays down to its competition and underperforms. But I don't know, every team has that. Every coach has teams like that. Every team has moments like that. And again, I just go back to, I don't think you're going to get anyone better. You can let him walk, and you're not going to find someone better than him, at least in the short term.
No.
So I think to let him go would be really, really short-sighted.
Yeah. And there's just to be realistic, he's not going anywhere. There, right. The conversations of Mike Tomlin's contract extension are not, you haven't performed up to this par. It's like, all right, let's work out a number here that works for both sides because we're trying to win Super Bowls. And I'm sure Mike Tomlin's agent is like, "Oh, well, we want money." And Mike Tomlin, did you ever hear you weren't around for the TJ Watt story, but when TJ Watt signed his massive contract extension, the story was, and he he confirmed it without, being so dramatic about the situation. But the story is that he marched into the contract extension, went on forever. And he was he wasn't practicing at training camp. He was working on the sides. He started the hold in thing in the NFL where players show up, but they just don't practice. He was working on the sidelines. And then the story is that eventually it hit a point where, he just marched into Art Rooney offered him a contract. It was a record breaking deal. His agent was like, "I think we could get more money." And he just marched into Art Rooney's office and he was just shook his hand. He's like, "This is a deal. This is great for me. I'm super excited." And then he was like, "All right, I got to go work out." And he just left and he went and hit the weight room because, and I'm sure that Mike Tomlin, if it hits a point, is walking in there and going, "Yeah, I'm not going to shut up. I'm going to sign this deal and remain the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Get out of my face, you agent." Because
he's already
got to do their job.
Yeah, but he's already a top 10. At least I looked this up. Is at least as of 2022, he was the 8th highest paid coach in the league, maybe tied for 7th.
Really?
It's he's making plenty of money. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think Mike Tomlin's stressing. And he doesn't leave his house. He doesn't do anything. He wears the same outfit every single day. So he's not out there buying clothes. So he's got no expenses, none. I don't know what he drives, but I know that GMs in the past, coaches in the past that have come in and out of Pittsburgh have pulled up in Chevys and Chryslers, and nobody's pulling in a Maserati or BMW being "I'm the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers." Nobody, I'm sure his expenses are very low and he's chilling with whatever paycheck you hand him if you are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So long story short, Mike Tomlin, chances are 99% chance he's getting a contract extension. And if you're disappointed about that, I apologize. Sorry to hear. All right. Last thing I want to talk about here. Najee Harris and Chase Claypool both made a very interesting list. Yahoo Sports put out 5 players who they believe have the biggest chance of a breakout season this year. The list includes Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, which makes no sense to me, Steelers running back Najee Harris, Bears wide receiver Chase Claypool, and Cardinals linebacker / defensive back Isaiah Simmons. Obviously, the two that the Steelers fans will highlight are Najee Harris and Chase Claypool. I want to dive into Najee a little bit first. I kind of feel that this is a really good opportunity for a breakout year for Najee Harris. I'm not totally sure what a breakout year is for Najee Harris. Like, he's
he rushed for like 1,200 yards.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. That is, that was going to be my first question is like, what constitutes a breakout? What is he going to rush for 1,500, like 2,000 yards? Like, is he going to go Derrick Henry or like what?
I think that's kind of the expectation is like, I think people last year were expecting him to be like the league leader in rushing yards or something. And then it didn't happen. I don't know. Like, he's made a Pro Bowl. He's had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. He's worked behind two god-awful offensive lines. And last year, he dealt with 2 foot injuries, a bad offensive line, and terrible quarterback play. So I just don't, and probably the worst offensive coordinator in football. So you have a really hard time saying, like, what did he do? What has he done wrong? But people do not like Najee Harris. I heard, not to go back to the fan. I don't want to act like I'm digging on the fan because I'm not. But Andrew Filipponi dragged him into the Penguins nonsense the other day and was like, the Tristan Jarry 5-year extension was the worst move or the most he's been angered by a team in this city since the Steelers drafted Najee Harris in the first round. Do I think Najee Harris was a first round pick? No, I don't think running backs are a first round pick. But like, we're 3 years removed. Okay. Najee's been just fine. You'd be looking for a running back if you didn't have Najee Harris. I just think that he's done what you've asked him to do with no support whatsoever. But for a breakout year, I mean, I don't know if you were considering a breakout year. Is it 1,500 yards and like 10 touchdowns or is it just like being a dominant? Like, is it rushing for? Is it over 5 yards or 4 yards a carry? Like, I don't know what that would consider.
Yeah, maybe like the explosiveness is the part of it. Maybe scoring more touch because he's had the yards like what is it 2,200 or something over the past 2 seasons, a little more than that. I like that. I guess the total yards don't matter as much to me as like the explosiveness, the big plays, touchdowns. I just that would have to be it because he can't really like break out after going over 1,000 yards in back-to-backs. That like doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But yeah, I guess it would have to be like an absurd amount of yards and some touchdowns.
So he's only averaged 3.9 yards per rush in his career. So maybe that's like, you want to get that to like 4.5 this season or something. I have no idea, because like the rest of this list, like Matthew Stafford makes absolutely no. I don't know how you could be 34 years old and a Super Bowl champion, and and on the list for a Hall of Famer, and be like, oh, this is the year breakout season coming for good old Matthew Stafford. But the rest of the list like makes a lot. Like Kyle Pitts, I believe is we haven't had an explosive season from him yet. Chase Claypool still waiting on that one after his rookie year. I get that one too. Like Najee's had his, like he's back-to-back 7-yard touchdowns or 10-yard touchdowns in a season. I don't know. Like I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know what you're looking for if you're Yahoo Sports. But at the same time, I do think that this is a year where we could, and if this is like just a very broad breakout definition, I do think this is the first time that we could see Najee Harris be like the focal point of an offense. I think this is the first year that we could see the Steelers say, we're going to win through Najee Harris. And, it's not a struggle to go win that game. It's a Derrick Henry where you just, this is the offense is Najee Harris and then everybody else kind of follows.
Yeah. Cause I would say he was kind of a focal point. What was that? His rookie year? Like, that was not a great offense. So I get that point there. Like this could be his most efficient year, if not his best year. I think that's a reasonable thing to expect. Cause I think he will, I agree with you. I think he will be a focal point again. Like for all the strides that I think Kenny and George Pickens in the passing game will make, I don't think that they're really going to lean on Kenny to throw, 35 times a game and throw for 300 yards every time. And if they're going to win, it's going to be Najee controlling the line of scrimmage and running the ball real well. And then, going into play action off of that and hitting Pickens deep and stuff like that. So I do agree with that point. I think a breakout year would be more about the efficiency and the big plays for Najee as opposed to, stacking up a ton of yards and touchdowns and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think
I think also, like, if Najee does have kind of what we're constituting as a breakout year here, he'll be like an MVP contender.
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm kind of looking at. Like, he's like an easy. I think the word easy is like important to me here. Like, he's an easy Pro Bowl selection. He's on the verge, if not making an All-Pro team. If he is an MVP candidate, or an offensive player of the year candidate at minimum. He's, the Steelers are not. It's been 2 years of like very hard fought wins for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think this is more of like a Pittsburgh Steelers breakout conversation than it is one singular player. But if the Steelers offense could win games, and they're not fourth quarter comebacks, they're not last second Najee Harris touchdowns, they're just wins. They're just easy wins. And Najee Harris is the guy who shines in those games more than most. I think then, that's a breakout for him, I guess. But I think that's more team oriented than it is anything else. And if we're being honest, I think it's like if they were gonna make this list again, I would put the Steelers offensive line as a breakout candidate over Najee Harris. Like, this is the first year in 3 years that the quarterback isn't going to have to just get hammered 10 times a game, and Najee Harris isn't going to get hit in the backfield every single time he touches the football. I think that would be considered a breakout season for the Steelers offense. Do you think that, because not obviously Chase Claypool's on this list as well, who do you think has a better opportunity to break out in 2023? Najee Harris or Chase Claypool? Who I have to, before you answer that question, I got to give a little, we came on here, talked about the modeling thing, and then it came out that he was actually overseas for the modeling thing. Definitely, let's not put that to the side. But he also worked with the NFL flag football, like for the youth over in the UK. He's obviously from Canada, so he's an international name for the NFL. Worked over there. Got to give him a little props for that one. We did go hard on the whole modeling thing. I'm not ignoring the modeling thing, but there was some good that came out of that. I want to highlight some good. Najee Harris or Chase Claypool, better opportunity to break out in 2023?
Well, I just think given where Chase Claypool is coming from, that he has a better chance for it, because the standard is probably lower for his, like, a breakout year for Chase Claypool is probably easier to obtain than a breakout year for Najee Harris, right? Like,
yeah,
Chase just has to do less because Najee's been pretty, like we said, Najee's been pretty good for a little bit now. Chase is not not been on the same level as Najee Harris, and Chase wouldn't have to be like the focal point of an offense for it to be a breakout year for him. So, but I do have to balance that with the idea that I don't expect much from Chase Claypool this year. Like, I think the Bears will be better, and like Justin Fields will be better, and that'll help. But yeah, I don't know how much I'm willing to expect of Chase Claypool. So I'd probably still lean Najee, even all that considered.
Yeah, I think Chase is like it should be a lot easier for him to, like, if Najee Harris's marks are like 1,500 yards, over 4.5 yards a carry, 10 touchdowns, the Steelers to be competitors. Chase's is probably like 1,000-yard season, 7 touchdowns. The Bears, nobody cares. Like, if the Bears are terrible, he has 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, which if the Bears are terrible and you have 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, like, that should be the minimal expectation as a wide receiver in an offense that's going to lose a lot. So it should be very easy. That being said, I agree with you. I think Najee's going to, if somebody gave me the bet of who finishes the season as a bigger performer, I guess, Najee, I'm putting my money on Najee Harris.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
10 times out of 10 times, just because I don't know. I think Chase is sadly like on the reverse side of these things, where it's just like even the Bears at this point, like, you don't get DJ Moore and have Darnell Mooney, and I believe they drafted somebody too, just to be like, Chase is our guy, like right. Chase is our number one. No, they clearly are concerned about where Chase falls. So we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, Najee, I mean, dude, Najee works harder than anybody I've ever I don't want to say that. I've seen some guys work very, very hard, but Najee works. Najee works very, very hard. So I think if I had to put my money somewhere, I'm putting it on Najee Harris.
Absolutely.
Almost every single time. All right. With that said, we're heading out of here. Thank you guys so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Like this video and find us anywhere you get your podcast. Check all of mine and Steven's workout at allsteelers.com. And our Pitt coverage, still red hot recruiting month for Pitt over at InsideThePanthers.com. I will be back on Friday with Derek. Enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.